from, how you got involved with independent film. Where did you grow up, and where did you go to school? And then I want to ask you about how you got involved with independent filmmaking.
I grew up in Massachusetts, and my mom was from New York City, and moved to the country. So it was a town of 4,000, very rural town called Merrimack, which is most famous for having the location where the Hells Angels would summer. The East Coast branch of the Hells Angels would summer during the summer. That's a good word. But she was my dad passed early, so I was raised by her, and she would take us into the city regularly to see Marx Brothers, and Buster Keaton, Charlie Chaplin, and all that. And so early on, I really loved those films. I learned very quickly I couldn't do a Charlie Chaplin walk with my friends without them thinking I was really weird. And if I went like this, they were like, "What are you doing?" So I understood there was different tastes in the world. But I wanted to be a revolutionary, not an artist, when I was young. And although I was impressed with the Clash, I guess the Clash kind of seemed like maybe you could do both things.
So Charlie Chaplin and the Clash.
We're important things that I felt. I loved film, but I thought it was self-indulgent, and I wanted to have a bigger effect on the world. I do think, though, the time of coming of age with punk rock was really important in the scheme of things, because it was a time where you felt that you could pick up a guitar, you couldn't play, but you had a lot of personality and something to say. Maybe a few folks would show up, and that kind of DIY, just go out and do it attitude was important. And I was somewhat restless. I like to get things done, and I left college early, and I started working for a Ralph Nader organization doing community organizing work. I had gone to school in Oregon for a little bit, came back to Massachusetts, ran the vaudeville campaign in the western half of the state, and started doing more of that. And it was a really incredibly intense work schedule, 100-hour work week. And so to unwind, most people drank or had sex. I was lonely, so I went to the movies by myself and decided not to get lost in that other stuff. And I was going to movies, virtually every night. And when I was getting frustrated at how slow, change occurred, one day I applied to film school, and I forgot about it, and I went back and I kept working. And then there was another day that I was feeling really down about how slow things took, and I got a letter in the mail from NYU Film School with a scholarship to go. And I was out on the West Coast then. And I was like, hell with it. I'm gonna, I can, get a law degree later. I'll go to film school now. And so I went to New York. I hadn't spent any real time there before that. And I arrived, the year of Spike Lee, Jim Jarmusch, and the Coen brothers. And in that kind of first week, first month and a half or so, I literally ran into all three of them in different places in the city, and I knew who they were. And that kind of just, rubbing elbows was enough to really kind of feel like, hey, it can get done. Mm-hmm. But the film school, NYU at the time, was, even though those all NYU grads, was still preaching only the Hollywood system. And it was really frustrating to me. I wanted to make personal, French New Wave, American, movies. And I decided to leave school again. And I started working as a production assistant. And it was the first wave of the video business, VHS cassettes, kind of fueling change. There was, surprisingly, from today's perspective, a shortage of content. There weren't enough titles to put up on the shelf. So anything was getting made. And
we're talking about the 80s, mid-80s?
Yeah. And I was, I worked for a company called Films Around the World. I got hired one time to produce a movie called The Incredibly Insane Rituals of the Undead Leather Witches from Hell. And it was going to shoot in 4 weeks. And they had no script, no job was as production manager, essentially, to find a location that you could shoot a whole movie with for under $100,000, because they had a video contract for that, that we could shoot right away. So we found we found a abandoned insane asylum where lobotomy in New Jersey had been performed. And if you see that movie, it came out as Doom Asylum. The movie changed along the way. Like half the cast was my friends. You know, the other half were professionals or folks that we found. And we just ran people up and down the halls, chasing each other. Another friend was in a rubber mask. But afterwards, I'd come back and I was working with Hal Hartley, a filmmaker who I thank you very much for the watch. I'd worked with Hal, and we would talk about how insane this type of filmmaking was. And Hal's cousin, Bob Goss, who's also a filmmaker now, was working for another company called Cinema Sciences, who had the first Julia Roberts movie ever called Firehouse. And it's basically Julia Roberts walks up the stairs and looks down and says hi. That's her first role. They sold it as Julia Roberts' first movie. But what that company did was they had a couple of video contracts, and they would hire like a B-movie actor like Lance Henriksen. I remember started a bunch of their movies. And one day they would dress him in like Italian mobster costumes. Then the next day they'd take him to the same location, dress him up as the Civil War vet. And then next one it'd be paramilitary, ninja assassin squad. And then they would give the footage to a bunch of college students and say, well, cut all the Civil War stuff, all the Ninja Death Squad, and all the mobster stuff together, and tell us which scenes for each of those movies were missing. And then they'd hire another B-movie actor and do it all over again to kind of bridge those scenes. And we thought it was kind of fascinating, that they were working that way, and we shared. And then, that's what ultimately led to Hal doing The Unbelievable Truth, a film that was in many ways my first production. We made it for $55,000 cash on 35, under a 2-to-1 shooting ratio. Sold it to Harvey Weinstein before we knew he was anything other than a big fat guy. $250,000. Shared the profits amongst the whole team. And if you go on to IMDb and you look at that cast and crew, like over 20 people went out to direct feature films, including Adrian Shelley and Bob Goss and other folks. And many of the other people, the makeup artists, everyone went out, and they were all kids who went to state school, that didn't come from privilege, and saw, you could still say, hey, let's put on a show. Nobody got paid initially, but in the end, everyone made it better than union wage on it, and were inspired that they could actually take hold of the means of production, make a film that spoke about who they were in today's world, and actually have it sell and be seen.
Has anybody seen The Unbelievable Truth? If not, I highly recommend the first homework assignment, first film you should put on your list if you haven't seen it, and it'd be a great one to go back and look at in the context of what Ted's talking about would be that film. I feel like Hal doesn't really get the credit, the attention, the acknowledgement, because I feel like in that period, I was in college at the time, and his name certainly resonated on the West Coast because he was doing something interesting and distinctive, and I feel like that his name and his films really drew a lot of me and my friends to that film and sort of defined what American indie film was at that very moment.
I think if you look at too, I did 9 films with him and got to work with him on again fairly recently on Fake Room, and that was a movie that cost under $2 million to make. Shot in New York, Paris, Berlin, and Istanbul. Had Parker Posey running in her lingerie on the rooftops of Paris at dawn. Blew up, trucks on the streets of Istanbul. Like incredible production value, made for nothing. Very adventuresome in its formal qualities, but still very much a fun kind of critique of spy movies. And unfortunately, because now it's no longer, there's not enough content to put on the shelf, now we're in this age of superabundance, he just kind of vanishes away. You know, that I think he's gotten better with his craft and his art. He's been true to who he is as an artist, but it's so hard to even get a conversation started.
Yeah, how hardly.
And we shot one of his movies in Texas, Simple Men.
Yeah.
You know, although it's set in Long Island, Houston, Texas actually looks a lot like Long Island if you squint.